everybody, I'm Chris.
I'm Adrian.
And I'm Jimmy.
And welcome to WorldView Finder, episode 14?
Wow.
15. No, it might be 15. I don't know.
You never know.
I never know.
Just stop saying that.
All right, sorry. That is 15. We're there. We did it. Hey, so crazy week. I don't even know if this is going to come out on time, so if it doesn't, apologies, because we're filming a day later because life has been crazy. So
You had a baby.
I had a baby.
A child.
Number 4.
Whoa.
So Bishop, he's cool. He's chill and relaxed. So that happened 2 weeks ago as of Wednesday. So if you're listening to this on Wednesday, it happened 2 weeks ago. If you're not listening to this on Wednesday, it's because I had a kid 2 weeks ago. So I'm still
Fair
out
enough.
on vacation. So came in for you, the listener.
You're committed.
And watcher. Yeah. So
Nice.
So thanks, everybody. But yeah, so it's been a crazy week. I got to preach at my home church 4 days after I had my kid. So
I know, I was curious about that.
yeah,
No,
I
you
did.
did good.
I went and taught. It was great. It was a lot of fun. So, but yeah, but we're here. We're here to talk about worldview stuff and the things going on in the world around us and just how everything pushes a worldview. And so we're going to talk about some of that stuff. So, Adrian, you read a book. Jimmy and I,
Well, what are we talking about today? First,
I don't know. Oh, I'm just
no.
kidding. I do know.
The lineup of today's combos.
Everything Sad is Untrue, the book you read.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about some stuff that happened in Florida, as always. Solomon Project, which it's this new thing that Jimmy's doing. I don't know. And then My Adventures with Superman. I watched. It's this new show.
Oh, it's a show. It's not your personal adventures with Superman.
It might be. We'll see. We'll,
both.
we'll
Your journey
see.
with
Stay tuned. That's at the end.
Superman. Okay, so Everything Sad is Untrue.
Yeah, I feel like this
I'd never
is
heard of this book.
An episode about identity. So we're going to start with Everything Sad is Untrue. So it's by Daniel Nayeri, and
Don't know it.
he is from Iran, and he's a refugee that his family ended up in Oklahoma City. And so he writes from a 12-year-old perspective of telling his class his story leading
Okay.
up to that. So this book is actually for like upper middle school kids, but upon reading it, I would say it's for upper middle school to adults, and even middle schoolers maybe should have somebody kind of walk them through it. Not because the content is bad, it's just very sad, like as a refugee. But since it's from this 12-year-old perspective, and you jump from his past to like him telling his class, it's very funny at the same time because the class like doesn't understand him. He has weird food, and like you can tell that there's a lot of humor in there just by the kids asking these questions and his observations of American culture. But also there's this underlying sadness of him walking through what he had to go through with his family to get here.
Oh.
So I just wanted to read a quote to you guys to react to, because I think this is kind of sums up the worldview of the book.
Okay.
So he says, "The point is that if you spend time with each other, if we really listen in the parlors of our minds and look at each other as we were meant to be seen, then we would fall in love. We would marvel at how beautifully we were made. We would never think to be villain kings, and we would never kill each other. Just the opposite. The stories aren't the thing. The thing is the story of the story, the spending of the time."
The thing is the story of the story.
Yes. So it's kind of like this. Yeah, like the book is like this because it's like he's telling a story and you're observing him tell this story, and in a way it's a coming of age, but he's discovering his change or his identity based on his past stories while he's telling the story. So
Okay.
it's not like a beginning to end. You kind of go on it with him.
Okay.
But it all wraps up really nicely at the end. Like, not nicely, but I mean, he kind of just discovers himself, or you think,
Yeah.
okay, the way, like, since he's Persian, he weaves a lot of like rug analogies, and so then you kind of see that the whole story is that himself, like he is threading, just almost seems random, but at the end you're like, this is a beautiful tapestry he
Oh,
loved.
Oh.
Yeah, so I would highly
book.
recommend it. I would. There's no like graphic or bad language or anything like that. It's just, I would say, like heavier content,
yeah.
just by the nature of him being a refugee.
But what I like about that quote is that it's talking more about the like getting to know people, and like
Yeah.
once you like actually stop arguing and stop like, oh, you're bad because you
Yeah.
believe this or you
Mm-hmm.
think this or you do this, like, and just actually talk to the person like, oh, they actually have a story and they have something worthwhile, because I mean that's how God created us. He created us with purpose and meaning and with life. And so when we actually stop and take time to meet people and like actually meet them and not just put a label on them, then it'll start to change us. And I that's a good quote.
Well, it's interesting too. I've heard you can't hate someone that you fully understand. So if you hate someone, then it's you don't fully understand them. So if you can
Right.
see, okay, go, and it's part of it is the story, seeing where they came from, what they went through to get to where they are today. And it's like, oh, if you knew all the backstory, if you knew the struggles that they took to get there, it would be hard to hate that person because you understand how they got there.
Right. It's the taking of the time to listen to people's stories,
Yeah.
like you were saying.
And I remember Andy Stanley talking about that one time where he's like, yeah, if somebody, he's like, has a completely different view than me, he's like, I want to like figure out why, because I know why I believe what I believe, but he's like, if they believe the opposite of that, I want to find out like, okay, well, what brought you to that point,
Right.
and then have a conversation about it. Whereas I think a lot of times, especially with our political world the way it is, it's like, oh, you're this political
Yeah.
party, I hate you because
Yeah,
that's
and there's
not
so
me.
many assumptions, and that's kind of like what this book is his class, and even his teacher had so many assumptions about him. But once he was sharing his stories and why the foods he was bringing were so important to him, and,
Yeah.
and all of that, then the whole class started to kind of gain meaning of his life.
Wow.
Well, and with the political thing too, I think we think people that don't believe the way that we believe, they know what they're doing is wrong, and they're just doing it because they're bad people. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
no matter on basically any issue, to some degree, the people that are saying the things that they're saying and doing the things that they're doing, they think that what they're doing is right and think that this is the best way to do it. This is best for everyone, and therefore I'm going to do it this way.
Yeah, and they want other people to do it that way.
Exactly.
So that's why they fight for that thing. And so that sounds like a good.
It's a very good book.
Everything
So
sad is untrue.
yeah, I'd
Put
recommend
that
it.
on my kids' curriculum for their.
Yeah,
homeschool.
but I would say like older, not the younger. yeah, the oldest.
Why am
one.
I so sad now?
Yeah.
My 2-week-old. You're gonna read this book and you're gonna like it.
Don't worry, if you're sad right now, it's untrue.
Yeah.
Everything sad is untrue. So recommended, and
Yeah.
anything else you want to say about that?
No, I mean, I would say like I think it accomplished its purpose for me of just now, even when I see people out in public that don't look like me, don't dress like me or whatever, I've already had a totally different mindset of like,
Oh.
I wonder what it took for you to get here. You know, I wonder what your story is, and
I
just
wonder
had
why
a
you're
little bit
dressed so
more.
ugly.
Yeah.
Now, did it motivate you to buy a rug?
I would like to, but they're way too expensive.
See, this is
Yeah.
actually just a marketing for buying rugs.
on the back
Sponsor
there,
us.
wait,
If you want to buy your Persian rug, call 888.
yeah, it says it on there. Speaking of calling people, it's time for Florida Foibles. I don't know, we're just jumping into this. No, because there's this guy, as you know,
Florida man.
Florida guy, and I don't know, Jimmy, if you ever did this growing up. Did you ever
Probably.
date more than one person at a time?
No, I actually dated like one person before I dated my now wife.
Oh,
So, no.
Adrian, did you ever date more than one person at a time?
No, I've only dated my husband. So,
What about you, Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I never did. I never.
Okay.
That the other person didn't know about. Like at college, you go on pick-a-dates. It's like
Pick-a-dates?
Your whole floor hangs out. This is Christian college. Like you just go hang out with
Oh
your.
yeah, but you don't really consider
Yeah.
those real dates.
Yeah, they're not real dates. And she wasn't my wife at the time. My girlfriend at the time knew about it, so I wasn't doing this behind the back. But this guy.
What's his name?
His name, I don't know.
It's very important.
Oh, it's Joseph L. Davis.
Yeah. Watch out for that guy.
He was born October 24th, 1972, if you want to know. But
Okay, well,
anyways,
thank
Joseph
you.
L. Davis, he proposed to his girlfriend. Right? That's a good thing. The ring he used was stolen from his other girlfriend that didn't know about this other girlfriend. And then she
Okay.
found out about it and goes and like looks up this new girlfriend that he got engaged to and sees her ring on this lady's.
So was it an ex-girlfriend then? Like he
No.
had given it to her?
Oh, they were still dating.
No, he was dating.
Like he was engaged to her because he had given her this ring?
Oh.
No, that ring was hers from a prior marriage.
Oh, this just...
This is a
okay.
tangled
we
web.
need a diagram to follow it.
We are
And so-
weaving
so
a
she's looking-
Persian rug with
the
this
tapestry.
story.
So she's looking at the photo, sees this ring, is like, wait, that looks very similar to my ring from my ex-husband. Goes and looks in her safe, finds that ring gone and her grandma's ring, and all that
grandparents.
stuff.
Okay, so he stole from her.
But Joseph is still out there, and so
Joe, if you're watching this right now,
you can contact
yourself
Crime
in.
Stoppers of Northeast Florida.
he
You
is still out there.
You can remain anonymous and still get the cash reward, potential cash reward. The number is 888-277-TIPS.
it's a real number. Call
That's
it.
888-277-TIPS.
He probably
So if you're
did
in
end up
Florida-
in Evansville. Everyone does.
Yeah. It's true,
He's
gonna
hiding
remember.
here in town.
So
So,
if you find this guy, Joseph L. Davis,
wild.
and
Okay.
if he looks about 48, then that's him. You get him. So, but okay, so I heard because in middle school this happened. There was a kid that like he was a weird kid. He was dating this girl. He would buy her all this like jewelry and stuff, and she got mad. They broke up, and she like comes in, throws all this jewelry at him, and was like, you're the
Wow.
worst. And then he's like, oh, okay, thanks, and gives it to his new girlfriend. And you're like,
this happened to
in
you?
middle school, yeah, it was a guy I knew.
Okay.
In middle school,
It was
Yeah.
close.
and so have you ever regifted something? Have you ever gotten something from somebody that like you felt was kind of sentimental, and you're like, oh, I'm going to give it to this new person that I've now formed this attachment to?
I have way too much guilt for that. There's no way I could do that.
Have you ever regifted anything? I think I got some regifted stuff for my wedding
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, that makes
because I got a set of
yeah.
candles that still had the card from their nephew,
So
or
Oh, my
from their
goodness.
niece.
It was
in
a
picture.
confirmation, not just you think.
Yeah.
It was a refit.
And I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know if I should go give it to him. Like, hey, your niece's card was still in that gift. And then I also got this like picture frame that was like gold and really gaudy that was not on any of our registry. I was like, this has
is
to be a
from
regift or something they found at a yard sale because it
That's
was.
funny. I don't
That was
think
you. Thanks. We loved it.
He loves it.
Your next one. We'll
Or
give it
has
to you.
anyone gifted you a library book that you had to return?
Yes.
No, this,
Another story where Chris is still angry 100 years later.
Yes, and I know the book. It was the second. It was the second book in the Wrinkle in Time series, A Swiftly Tilting Planet, and I've never read it to this day. But my
You haven't?
no.
You're so angry.
I'm a terrible. And Wrinkle in Time is one of my favorite books. We were listening to it with my kids the other day in the car. But yeah, I like. It was a package that looked like a video game, and I was thinking, oh, this is a video game. Open up, it's a book, which was okay. I like books, but it was a library book that I had to return. And my mom was like, well, you're gonna just read it once and take it back, like, and then we just have this book we bought. So it was a good idea, but but as a
So
kid, I was
thrifty.
very angry about it. And
As a
very
kid,
disappointed.
You got a
still
library
angry.
book.
I hold grudges apparently.
Wow.
You do.
About real important things.
I've not got that.
The important things in life. All right,
Speaking of important things in life,
Jimmy.
is that the next segment?
Yeah.
Perfect. That was actually a good segue.
Yeah.
Until you mentioned it and ruined it. All right.
Exactly. Oh, sorry. So I was listening to a podcast. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts recently, and I've been listening to this guy named Alex Hormozy, which he is like a kind of a big time business guy that he ran a bunch of gyms and then taught people how to open gyms, how to fill them. And then he's built businesses since then. So I think he's worth over like $100 million right now, and he's
Wow.
40. So,
True.
but he was doing all that, so it seems like he's pretty successful. But he said on a podcast, one of the decision making frameworks he uses is called the Solomon Project. Now, I Googled the Solomon Project to see if it was like a thing, and the only thing I could find was a book about a horse called Project Solomon. that said a lonely horse who found a home and became a hero, which is not what he was talking about. So
Yeah, that's
not the wrong Solomon
okay,
project.
well, that was a
the horse that left home and became a hero.
Yeah,
Tangent.
a lonely horse who found a home and became a hero.
Oh, okay.
It's a Solomon project. But what the Solomon project is, that was a side tangent.
Side
I
note.
am very glad we went through that.
What this is,
It
so
all makes
basically,
sense in the end.
he says he does this on like a weekly, when he's thinking about different problems that are coming up or challenges or just different decisions that he's going to make. What the Solomon project is you write down all of your problems or challenges in kind of question form on a document. And then you have a conversation with your 85-year-old self.
So there's time travel involved.
There is time travel involved. So you're
How
so
do you do that?
So you write all your questions down as if you were asking for the answers, and then you imagine yourself at 85, and then you give your current self advice on how to handle these problems.
Okay.
And he said the benefit of this is your 85-year-old self is one, at the end of your life, you're going to see and be focused on what really matters, and your values and your vision are going to be aligned with your current self. So that is, you can give yourself kind of a big picture perspective and give yourself advice on the different problems and challenges that you face.
Okay, I like that idea.
Yeah.
But how do you disband belief enough of like of what you currently know and all that stuff? Because I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm 85. I would have eaten tacos every day. I'm like, oh, that's good
Would you?
advice. Probably wouldn't make it to 85, but like I think I'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
you should do these things. This will be fun. Like you missed out on the fun and all this stuff.
Yeah.
because you worked too hard or whatever. But then it's
Or
like,
like if you follow that advice, then what you're gonna like go broke or like you said, eat tacos and
so
be unhealthy.
yeah. So how do you
How
do you fight your 85-year-old self?
So-
That's what-
Maybe you go find an 85-year-old and ask them your own questions.
Well, so here's the thing. So I actually did it for a couple of my challenges, problems, or different questions. And
Oh.
so what I did.
That's why Jimmy has Werther's Original in his pockets right now.
Exactly, my 85-year-old self. Exactly, the chewy ones. They're the best.
Chewy ones because your dentures can't handle it.
Yeah. So what I did was, I think in life there are when we ask these questions of ourselves from our 85-year-old perspective, there are these underlying values, and I think there are things that we believe really matter in life. And it's easy to kind of push those off and just think of the immediate right now. But what your 85-year-old self does, looking back over your life, you're like, these are the things that really matter, the things that are really important.
Yeah.
So I wish you would have focused on those more. So
Okay.
for me, in
Okay.
a couple of things I did, it wasn't self-destructive.
Yet.
I wish
Yeah.
you would have just eaten tacos every day until you were 36.
Oh, man.
Then you died. So, but for me, it was really good just to kind of see, okay, if I believe these things really matter and these are things that will last in life,
Yeah.
I should be focusing on those, and that's kind of the frame I should be looking at things rather than what feels good, what do I think I should do right now.
So is that similar to the author of the book? Because he wrote it as like a 12-year-old perspective, but it was him like realizing all these things.
Yeah, so
What
that's
had
super
happened?
interesting because I was gonna read another quote that I
Oh.
saved that I was gonna
I thought
bring
you were
up.
just bored.
No,
I mean,
I pulled up
TikTok.
because I had two quotes saved, but I was like, well, it's not super relevant to the
Yeah.
conversation we were having, but now
But
it
now
is
it
relevant
is.
to the
Okay.
conversation we were having. So it ties in. Okay, so at one point he lived in a refugee it was a refugee hotel, and it was in Italy. And he observed a lot of like the hopelessness of some of the refugees that lived there, but his mom, like, he's just kept saying my mom was unstoppable. And so he said, here's the thing, you'll both have the same year at Hotel Barba, but one of you will be looking around with joy and anticipation, wondering what you can do to prepare your kids for the new world. And the other will be slumped in the courtyard, surrendered to the idea that it's all just one long river of blood. I don't know which belief is true, nobody does, but what you believe about the future will change how you live in the present. And that's how my mom did it.
Wow.
So from your 85-year-old perspective, you want to have that joy and that peace.
Yeah, you're like you're living with the anticipation of the future.
Yeah. So I know you said you tried this. Do you
Yeah.
mind telling us what
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, so part of it was, okay, in the next like 10 years of my life, like what are the things that I should focus on and what should be kind of my priorities and how should I do things?
Yeah.
And I think my 85-year-old self.
Does he still go by Jimmy or does he go by Jim?
He goes by Jim.
Okay.
Just kidding. That's how my
Jimbo.
dad and my grandfather were. They went by Jimmy as a kid and then Jim as an adult. So with my 85-year-old self, it was because talking about, like business or anything like that, really focusing on the importance of relationships. Because it's like at your being 85, it's like the things that are going to last a lifetime, the things that you're like, I'm really glad I got this right, was like my relationship with God and my relationship with the people around me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And focusing on that, because I think some people will chase their dreams and do this kind of thing, and they will actually miss out on those things. And then I feel like their 85-year-old self would be like, it's great that you accomplished all these things, but you might have been more fulfilled if you would have put that same time and energy really helping people, impacting people's lives, and focusing on the relationships that you have around you.
Yeah.
So did you feel like the Solomon Project, did you feel like that worked? Like you actually talking to your 85-year-old self? Or do you feel like you would have come up with those conclusions on your own?
I think it was a helpful exercise to do it because I literally in a Google Doc wrote out the question, and then it ended up being like a paragraph response. And it was interesting because my 85-year-old self, I would sort of address the specific question, but then also give like a broader principle that you should live by.
Ah.
So it's like I know
Just
that
kind of helping you sort through your thoughts.
Yeah.
because it's like even my 85-year-old self, it's like even the questions that you're asking, it's good to ask those, but what you need to be thinking about is even bigger than that.
Yeah.
So it's very helpful for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll do it again?
Yeah, so Alex Hormozi, he said that even like the stuff that he's doing like week to week, like the projects that he takes on or different things or different challenges that comes up, he will put these things in the Solomon Project and he'll do it like every week.
So why is it called the Solomon Project?
I don't know. That's why I tried to Google
Maybe
it and I just
Solomon
found
was full of wisdom.
Solomon. Oh.
Yeah, so I think that's the
Solomon.
but yeah, so the next time you have a question, just ask your 85-year-old self.
Yeah. And I think it helps you also ask the question, like, when I'm 85, do I still care about this? Or do I, want
and most
to...
things are probably
Yeah.
not.
Right. Like, because I'm thinking when I'm 85, I'm going to be, like, sitting in a chair, smoking a pipe, reading Lord of the Rings. That's my dream of an 85-year-old. To be like, none of that mattered.
The Ints have decided. You get that low voice from all that tobacco.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
So I watched a show. It's the new or my Adventures with Superman, and it's a
Okay.
new Superman show. But in it,
On what platform?
oh, it was on Max, but I think it's a new Cartoon Network show.
Okay.
And it comes out on Max every week, and I don't know what day because I turn it on. I'm like, oh, it's on. So there's only
Whenever
three.
Chris turns the TV on.
There's only 3 episodes out right now. But I'll get to there's an older perspective in the show. But I've never really liked Superman, but I want to give it a try.
Yeah.
So because Superman is too powerful, right? He's like it never feels like he has real problems. It's like this.
Kryptonite.
Yeah, he's got kryptonite, and it's like.
How often do you have access to that?
Yeah, unless somebody has kryptonite, you know that Superman's going to win.
Yeah.
And so it's like there's no adversary, and I can't really relate to him, and so that's why because like Batman, you're like, okay, he's a crazy billionaire and all this stuff, but
You can relate to that.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. No, but it's like he's a normal, like he doesn't have superpowers and stuff like that. It's just
Okay.
him being smart and using his resources to fight people and things like that. And so like because most superheroes, there's like some relation, like you have a relatability issue and stuff like that. But I've never felt that to Superman, and so I've watched the Superman movies, and I've watched the old ones and the new ones. I didn't watch the Snyder Cut or whatever that's like 4 hours long or 6 hours or however long it is. Didn't watch that, but I did watch Batman v Superman, which was terrible.
Really? I never saw it.
What, you seen it? Like
No, I didn't.
Batman's killing Superman, and it's
Spoiler
like,
alert.
It's like, oh, Martha, tell Martha. I said, and Batman's like, what? You know Martha? And he's like, that's my mother. He's like, my aunt is Martha. And it's like, did we just become best friends? It's so,
Oh, my goodness.
That's weird.
Yeah, it was not great. But and I feel like they don't know ever what to do with Superman because it's like, oh,
Yeah.
he of course he dies and he comes back and he's weird. Like,
He's
I don't know.
Jesus.
Wow,
But-
spoiler alert.
Okay, sorry. I did read the Superman comic, Death to Superman, and the one after it. But my adventures with Superman is kind of going back to his, like, when he's figuring out his powers and stuff. So, like, it starts with him as, like, a little kid, like, probably 10, 12, or whatever, and he, like, stops this car, and, like, it's about to wreck, and he's like, what did I just do? Like, he doesn't know that he even has powers. And so then he, like, learns he can fly. He's like, oh. But then, so it takes place in Metropolis when he's now moved to the city, and he's an intern at the Daily Planet. So he's not working there fully, but he's got his friend Jimmy.
That's me.
With him, and who's a photographer. And then they meet Lois Lane, who's, like, an intern as well. And so the three of them are, like, kind of these go-getters, like, breaking stories, and they have to, like, undermine the captain and all this stuff to get their story. But then he always gives it to the news team, and they're like, what? And they're so mad because the news team gets all the good stories. He's like, well, keep working as an intern and you'll be there someday. So, but Superman is figuring out his powers and stuff. And I think it's called My Adventures with Superman because like Lois is like his friend or whatever. But or Jimmy too. I don't know which one it's because the main character is Superman. So, but he keeps asking the question like, "Who am I?" Because he's like when he's figuring out, even as an adult, I guess he's in his early 20s, like figuring out like, "Oh, I've got these powers that I didn't know I had." And so he goes back home, and they had buried this UFO thing in the ground that because he's from another planet. That's the other thing. He's an alien, whatever. So you knew everybody knew that.
Everybody knew that.
Everybody knows that. But but he's like, as a kid, he goes in to do this thing, like to learn who he is, and then something goes wrong, and his mom starts to fall in the pit, and he like saves her, and he's like, I don't want to ever do this, and he buries it back. He's like, okay, I don't care. I'm your kid, whatever. So then, like as he's getting older, he's like, I do want to know. So he goes back, and as he's going in there, he's like, I just want to know who I am. And like his mom, who's now older, is like, I know who you are, and it's like. It's this moment of like I recognize like the qualities that you have and you're a good person and all this stuff, and so she's afraid this thing's going to change him. It does give him his suit, his super suit. Where is my super suit? So, but the whole show is like who he's asking this question of who he is, but it's like his mom kind of has this perspective of like I know who you are, like I know I've watched you grow up and I know that you're this good person and all this stuff, and so thankfully that thing doesn't change him, but he's like learning to be Superman. But he's asking that question like, who am I? And I think that's kind of what that book like is. This kid is figuring out.
Yeah, but he's like learning, and I think is Superman the same, where he's learning who he is based on his current experiences, but also the past stories that his mom is telling him. Yeah. And so that's like
it's a theme.
Yeah, I mean that is a really good theme to think about, like as we go forward, who we are is what we're experiencing now, but how we relate to that in the stories of our past.
Yeah, and I think that worldview, because that's what the Bible was. Like it was the older generation telling the younger generation. I mean, it's Deuteronomy 6. Like teach these things to your kids as they walk along the road and as they go to bed and as you're like put them on your doorposts and your city gates. Like this scripture and the stories should be everywhere. And all that stuff. And then you have in Judges where it's like a generation grew up that neither knew what God had done or had seen the things that he had done for the Israelite people. And so you're like, a generation missed it and didn't share those stories and didn't pass on the things that they were supposed to. And it was bad news for them. And so, so passing on those things to the next generation is important, and not just like our stories, but the story of God and who he is and Jesus and all that. And so do we do that and all? I don't know. I mean, it's tough at times. Yeah,
and to not put ourselves as the hero of our own story too. Oh, that's something that the book acknowledges. He says, I think even like, I'm not the hero of my story, even though I'm the main character. But because you're the main character of your own story, but you're not the hero of it.
Ooh, that's good.
Who is?
God.
But Jesus. In the book, you said in the book, he said he wasn't the hero?
Yeah, I think his was more like there wasn't really a hero. Oh. or like kind
Everything
of
sad is
like
true.
his stories where I mean his mom became a Christian and he was going to church with her, and he acknowledges the importance of her faith. And that's why they even had to flee Iran, is because his mom became a Christian and they were going to be killed. So there is some Christian kind of themes in there, and he even like a family vouches for them, and that's how they can come over. It's like a family from a church, and he was like the most Jesus thing that anybody could ever do for someone is to like trust and believe in a family that they don't know, and invite them into their home.
Wow.
And vouch for them, basically. And so he definitely acknowledges that. So I think there's a lot of different heroes in his story, but he doesn't really come out and say, like, God or Jesus is the hero of my story kind of thing.
Well, it's interesting going to the Superman thing, because the thing that he was struggling with was the question of, who am I?
Yeah, he asked that out loud several times in the shows.
Yeah, so I think one worldview is either the things that have happened to you in your past or the things that you're doing now that is who you are. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people can buy into that, whether if they had a traumatic past, like, well, all these bad things happened to me, and that's just who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever, whether it be work, whether it be relationships, whatever they're doing currently, they're like, okay, that's who I am. And the problem with that is, if that changes, then you're like, well, I don't know who I am anymore. Because if Superman stops being Superman, then he goes through a whole identity crisis.
Right.
And I think where it should be, and what the Christian worldview is, it's not on what's happened to us in the past, and it's not the things we do now that's our identity, but it's what God says about us.
Yeah.
And it's not based on what we do, but it's about who he has made us to be.
Yeah.
And that's why I said it's tough to pass that on sometimes, because we want to be the hero of our own story.
Yeah.
And we also, there's things in our past that are not great. And so to like bring those things up, like we kind of have to relive those moments and like, oh, well, here's where I've made mistakes. And like, you don't necessarily like to share that with your kids or with other people sometimes, but it's like God's power is made perfect in our weakness. And so that's where we're like, no, I'm not the hero, and this is how he's the hero.
Yeah. And if like you said, that God's power is made perfect in our weakness. If we continue to share those stories, then our kids or even ourselves can see how God has brought us through those. And that's even like kind of where the title comes from. Everything sad is untrue, is the hope that he was talking about, like how you see your future is how you live your life. And so hopefully at the end of your life, all the sad things become untrue because you've been redeemed. You've had this redemption story and figured out who you are. And I think as Christians, we should do that too. We live in light of the future of our hope of redemption, and that God is making all things new. He will make all things new, but he currently is as well.
Yeah.
So we live in the light of that. And if we can walk our kids through that, or the people around us through that, then they're going to have those same testimonies as us.
Yeah. Man. So share your story. Like tell us a story. Like tell us how you got here and all that stuff.
Tell us how you got here in the comments.
Tell us what led you to Worldview Finder. No.
Maybe my adventures with Superman is him. Like it's his adventures with himself.
What? Superman's not even him. Superman is his persona. He's like, my adventures with Superman.
Yeah, Clark Kent's.
Yeah.
Wow. But
that's deep.
It's a good show. There's a little bit of violence, but it's
expected.
I don't think there's
from
bad words or
superheroes.
anything, but it's fun. So, hey, this is Worldview Finder, episode 15. I got it right. It took me all episode. I'm Chris.
I'm Adrian.
And I'm Jimmy.
We'll see you next time.